right. Welcome back to another episode of Baxter's Buzz. I am your host, Baxter E. Hall. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining me. Welcome to my brain, my frequency. Enter at your own risk. Um, I have a number of different interests, things that I pick up on, conversations that I'm having, interesting books, movies, and interesting people. And speaking of interesting people, I have someone that I've met recently that I've been incredibly intrigued by. Um, I will just leave a lot of that for the conversation, but the founder of Indelible Impressions, Yvonne Alston. Hello, Yvonne.
Hi, how you
Hi.
doing, Baxter?
You know what? I'm in a really good mood. Happy to talk to you. Always nice to connect. I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged. How about you?
I'm great. I'm really happy to be on Baxter's Buzz today. You are have quickly become someone that I admire and that I'm consistently inspired by. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today and to hopefully inspire your listeners for the work that I do. So I'm great. I'm here with you.
Yeah, yeah,
That's it.
right.
What
Yeah,
more could a girl need?
that's right. I think about the way that I do the podcast. The way I started it was whether I was getting $1 million an episode or whether I was getting $0. I wanted to do the things that were interesting to me, the people that were interesting, people that inspired me. So
Mhm.
I, everything's organic and it feels incredible. It feels incredible. So let's talk about you, the reason that we're here today. Um, Indelible Impressions.
Yes.
Tell me about the name and tell me the reason for the name and what does it mean to you?
All right. So, indelible impressions is something that um, has very deep meaning to me. It has actually a very deep spiritual meaning to me. It was something that I was in prayer about for quite some time, and just understanding that part of my life, my passion, and my purpose was to make an indelible mark. And when I had the opportunity to launch my own business, and realizing what it was that I needed to be doing, making an indelible impression came very quickly to both heart and mind. And so that's the name of the company. That's kind of, if you will, the why behind it. My goal with Indelible Impressions is to do exactly what the name says, is to make an indelible impression upon organizations as they're trying to transform the culture of their workforce for the better, and that impression would extend outside of the organization's walls into the realm of society and communities, and so that it has a greater impact. And just working towards helping to make society grow and expand for the better.
How are you going about that mission? It's a lot involved in that. Tell me, where's your area of expertise and um how do you sort of go about starting with these organizations and as they trickle to the community and that. But tell me your part that you guys play in that.
Sure. So, Indelible Impressions, it is a DEI strategy and execution firm. We work directly with the organization to start them off by assessing or taking the temperature of their culture, to find out how their workforce is feeling, how they are engaging both within their walls, if you will, and also with their stakeholders, and figure out perhaps where their biases lie, where the gaps and opportunities are to grow in that area, and then to customize trainings and workshops that specifically target and address those areas. And then from there, we build a curriculum that helps to underscore and support the learnings so that they're not only just developing a head knowledge of it, but that they can actually have some accountability and put to practice what they've learned. And so that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I would say one of the biggest components of this work for me, and I always tell leaders of these organizations, is that when I come into the organization to aid them in this work, I'm not just there for the company's minds, I'm there for their heads and hearts, because I truly believe that the heart is where sustainable change is made and will live. And so it's one thing for people to have a head knowledge of DEI principles and how to better manage their bias, eradicate some of the stereotypes that are floating around in their heads, and how to engage better with one another from a human first perspective. That's all great for them to know. But when you prick their hearts, when you've made an indelible impression upon their hearts to change for the better, and all of the benefits that yield from that, then I say, like, ooh, we've got them, and so there's a greater opportunity for them to live out what they've learned. And again, not just in the workplace, but in all the areas of life. I say that their foot shall tread. And so that's my ultimate goal, is to not just contribute to bettering workforces, but to better society as well.
Wow. I think that was one of the things that stood out to me with your mission, and sort of your end goal was really, we want to hit them, not just when they're 9 to 5s, right? We want them to take this home to their families. We want them when they're out in the community. And I went, wow, yeah, because if it makes sense here
Mhm.
to get rid of biases and stereotypes, and maybe a lot of sort of unconscious things that we may be doing, or thoughts that we may have, if it makes sense within the confines of our 9 to 5s, our jobs, it makes sense everywhere else too, right?
Absolutely. And you think about the exponential impact of that. Um, if you go home, you take this information and you're talking to your significant other, you're talking to your kids, you're impacting them as well. And then they might take their learning and then go into their other social circle, to their other environment, and share that information. And so it's really important. And especially, I believe, with the youth of today. Um, we know that as adults, and I think even most teenagers and middle school children, they know how divided our nation is, how fractured our society is. And so the earlier we can start having these conversations, the better. And the hope is that as individuals are having conversations in these other forums, that the younger people are, when they learn about some of these concepts, is we will see, hopefully within the next 5, 10, 20 years, such a shift of how we think as a society, that perhaps there won't even be a need for people like me anymore.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like working myself out of a job. But to be honest with you, that's my hope. My
Yeah.
hope is that organizations and society as a whole at some point will need people like me. That this kind of thinking and this way of engaging will become foundational in people's lives. It will become second nature.
Well, that is awesome. I think you're safe for a while, though. I think we have a lot of work to do as a society. So
Unfortunately,
yeah, you're in
unfortunately
good shape
so.
right now. Um, can you tell me about just your transition
Mhm.
from the sort of the corporate setting, and some of the roles that you had on the corporate level, and what led you to Indelible, and the passion that you have behind it?
Yeah, so I would say, I have 21 plus years in corporate marketing and communications. across various industries, and it was an amazing ride. But there was this shift, I want to say truly like within my soul, of wanting to better align with my passions and my purpose. And so doing DEI was for quite some time more off the side of my desk in supporting from a volunteer perspective within the organizations that I worked, their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And so whether that was typically through employee resource groups or business resource groups, and then volunteering out through my church and just other community engagement opportunities. And so I made the conscious decision that it was time to move from almost a little bit that corporate safety nest into doing this work, because I figured, if I can align all the years of knowledge that I have and the education along with this, that with the passion, I truly felt like there was no way it wasn't going to be successful, right? Because that passion is there, and it was such a fire that it was going to allow me to work on a whole nother level. And so I made that transition, and I have to tell you, I haven't looked back one day. I am more fulfilled than I've ever been before. I'm executing stronger than I ever have before. And it's amazing. It's amazing for me to wake up every single day and be like, okay, this is what I need to do. It's not daunting. It's not frustrating. I absolutely love the work. And I will say, as an entrepreneur, it's definitely late nights and early mornings. But there has not been a single day that I've looked in the mirror and had any regrets.
Mm.
And to have the growth that Indelible has had in such a short time period is amazing, and already seeing the fruits of repeat business from early clients. I think it just confirms for me that this was absolutely the right decision.
That's awesome. You said something that I think is common in conversations that I've had with people over the years. This sort of desk side DEI resource or specialist or coordinator, right? How often have you seen that throughout your years in corporate, and where there was maybe before there was someone else, or maybe there were a couple of people that employees went to just try to make sense of some things, or certain employers or certain employees would sort of speak up for the masses and for maybe the folks that were underrepresented. And then from a marketing standpoint, you have a special vantage point, because many times when you're talking about communication, right, you have to be very uh, aware of who you're communicating to, the cultural aspects of that, and any other sort of uh, things that could be misinterpreted if
Mhm.
not communicated properly. So, like, when did you become that resident, you know, untitled sort of specialist for that go-to person? And did you see anybody prior to you, as you were kind of coming into the corporate field, that you learned from, or that you were empowered by because of some of the things that they were doing?
Absolutely. So for some of the organizations that I worked for, oftentimes they had a resident, head of diversity and inclusion there. It was through the employee resource groups where I was really able to hold positions that gave me this, very close view of what the work was and what I was doing to aid the efforts of the organization to highlight diverse individuals, to help build pipeline programs, and also to help with the educational components of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so the great thing is I was never kind of alone in that, although it was interesting because a lot of the organizations that I worked in, there was not a lot of diversity there in the first place. And so oftentimes I would be the only person of color on my teams. I would often be the only female person of color on my teams. So not only was I lending my, I guess you could say, my intellect, my skills, and my passion to the employee resource groups and their efforts, but I was also simultaneously living what lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion causes and the harm, unfortunately, that it causes. So, a very interesting dynamic there. And then, as you mentioned, layering in the marketing and the communications pieces where I'm able to take those skills and now put them to work for my clients. It just kind of, that dynamic of all things work together for good. So it was a totality of both the education, the lived experience, the work experience combined that I believe have made me not just a stronger DEI strategist, but also having that perspective as someone who's endured the difficulties, the hardships, the microaggressions, the being the only one, the code switching, the assimilation, like all the different aspects that plague organizational culture when there's lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I think that all of that together has just given me a really unique lens and also a stronger perspective on things. And then, I've always kind of been very, I guess you could say in some regards, softy. And so my soft skills, developing those have always been really important to me. And I have an ability, I believe, to just see people for where they are and where they're not and where they want to go, and being able to help strategize and champion them to reach that full potential.
I think it's awesome, and I have one of my favorite people in the world. She comes from the marketing space, and she would be on these teams. Uh, the only black girl in the room is it was a blog that she had started years ago, and
Right.
she'd be a part of these conversations, and the just the ignorance of approach or ways to communicate. And
Mm,
these were projects that were for pretty big companies, and they just did not have the the experience internally, and she didn't always feel comfortable enough sort of speaking up. Can you talk about the importance of diversity? And for the record, you know this, I know this, but for someone listening or watching, diversity isn't just about uh, throwing, a couple of black people on a team, right? A woman on a team. Talk about what like the importance of diversity and the type of diversity that helps organizations culturally, but also from a bottom line standpoint.
yeah. So, I mean, as a noun, diversity is the state of being diverse or having variety. And so I would say, it's important for people to understand that it's not just this, number one. And it's also oftentimes not something we can control. For example, I am a fair skinned Black woman, and there's no changing that, right? And diversity is also a practice, it's something that you do. And what I feel it should mean on a personal and a societal level is that every part that makes us different from one another is considered valuable and should be valued by others. That there's a respect for those differences, whether that's nationality, ethnicity, religion, gender, etc. And for organizations, they really having diversity in the workplace is so very critical. it makes all the difference. If you look at any of the statistics, I mean, there's certainly a strong business case for diversity. Um, and, I would say that in the 21st century, there should no longer exist or even desire that we exist as a monoculture in any environment. Homogeneity, where society emphasizes or de-emphasizes aspect of one's identity, really just results in assimilation. And that's never good for an organizational culture at all, because if you have a group of people who only think alike and who feel alike, then you're kind of you're missing the mark as far as who you're actually marketing to, right? Unless you are somehow or another in some geography, in some nation where everybody is the same, and you're only marketing to that direct same dynamic of people, cohort of people, well, then that would work for you. But for most companies, you're opening your products and your services to whomever is interested in consuming them. So why would you not have a workforce that properly reflects that? And again, going back to seeing the value in the diversity of perspectives that come to the table and what that actually looks like. And the benefits that an organization is able to leverage from that. When you get people who come from diverse backgrounds, have diverse lived experiences as well as educational experience, come from different geographies, whether that's within the United States or abroad, you get people who think about problems differently. They look at things from a different vantage point. Those are going to be the people that can help you to ideate on a whole nother level. Those are the people that are going to be able to look at a problem and see things from a different perspective than those who typically are sitting around these decision making tables can look at, because they understand it from a different experience level. Those are going to be the people who are going to help you innovate on a whole nother level, that are going to help you tap into new markets for the products and the services. So there's such value in having a diversity in the workplace, that there are a plethora of statistics out there that show that it improves competitiveness, it improves productivity. I mean, it's just the benefits are really countless. So it's a critical component of today's ever growing workplace. And from a consumer standpoint, that's exactly what consumers want. They're not okay anymore with just a company who provides a particular product or service and it's good. They want to know about who are you behind the scenes. We see this with big brands, right? You think about Nike and some of the other brands that have taken stances on things to say, like, listen, this is who we are, this is what we represent. Well, you have people who are sitting there saying, like, oh, I'm so mad about this, I'm gonna burn my Nikes. And you have other people that are like, okay, Nike, I see what you're about. And therefore, I will take my consumer dollars and I will spend with you over another brand. And we see this constantly in the evolved marketplace. Consumers have choice, employees have choice. And so, who you are in the deepest part of your brand identity matters. And so, diversity is one of those things that have come to the surface that people are looking at to say, from a vision and a value system and a mission, who are you? And unless you align with what I may want as a consumer or a person seeking a job, talent, if your value system and mission don't align with my own, I'm going to stage left, or I'm going to go, work somewhere else. I'm going to buy somewhere else.
You mentioned talent, and that's actually my next question, because I want you to solve huge problem. Solve it in 5 minutes, if you would.
Okay, I will try.
All right.
No pressure, no pressure.
No pressure at all. So we have these. I'm sure you've had these conversations from business leaders or organizational leaders, where they've heard all what you said. It sounds good, but how do we incorporate diversity in as we recruit new talent
Mm.
that fit our culture, our current culture?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm just going to be, I believe in being unapologetically authentic. So, with that, I will say I detest the notion of culture fit. Absolutely detest it because for me, culture fit says this is who we are. And we kind of, the organization puts itself in a box and says, when you, Yvonne, come into the organization to work for us, you have to fit this way of thinking, this way of being, because we have built this cultural dynamic here. And so you have to fit in with what exists versus culture add, which says, takes a different approach and a different look to say, okay, this is the team that we're hiring for. What do we currently have on our bench today? And let's look at that against where we're looking to go. What are the real goals for this particular team or business unit? And then let's look at what that gap is and let's hire for the gap. Let's hire for someone who's going to bring added value, something we don't already have to the team, to the environment. Perhaps it is they have some similar experience, but maybe they have it in a different industry. But those skill sets are transferable. But through the interviewing process and the contemplation process, we see some things in a particular individual that can elevate the culture of that team, that have some skills that perhaps can get us to that next level of where we want to go. That's the thing I feel like organizations miss. And that's something that recruiters really need to be looking at, that human resources needs to be looking at, that we don't want somebody who's just going to fit in, right? This isn't about plug and play. This is about accepting those who can actually come in and in a positive way disrupt the status quo so that we can expand and go higher. Because when I feel when organizations focus on culture fit, they're actually working against their own best interests to
That's right.
grow, to compete, and to excel in their given marketplace.
They have too many blind spots, and there's no one there either that shares different experiences or different opinions, or who's empowered enough to share those, right?
Right. And that's that homogeneity that we often see, right? Is where organizations, they hire the same, right? Because they want to make sure that they fit and they're going to gel well with the team, right? And they're not looking at if somebody comes in, for example, I was talking to someone recently and they had some frustrations about a team that they were on. And the individual was looked at as like, well, the team has been working great for X amount of time. And then you come in and you brought something different, and people perhaps weren't gelling with the individual as well as the hiring manager had hoped. And they automatically pinpointed the individual. And what the individual was doing is they were trying to essentially like level up the way that the team was doing things. And they were kind of setting a standard and really had this approach that a rising tide lifts all the boats, right? Like this is something that you guys maybe didn't do before. You weren't looking at something from this perspective, but let's take it to the next level. And instead of the hiring manager and the organization looking at the team and saying, well, there's way too much homogeneity here. This person is right on spot. Like they're actually what we want to see and how we want to grow. They targeted the individual, and the individual, I don't know where they stand right now, but I dare say that they're probably going to lose that individual to another organization because that person is not able to grow and thrive there if they feel like they can't expand, and that the homogeneity of the team is so much more important than the growth of it. And
Right.
so,
Don't rock the boat, right?
right, exactly, exactly. And so, and that's to your point a moment ago about how the blind spots, right, really come into play. But when organizations have diversity intelligence to really develop, motivate, and empower, people can really achieve extraordinary results. And so, but they have to do that work of uncovering their personal biases and prejudices that hamper growth, ideation, exceeding the competition, and ultimate success. And looking at people for who they are, championing them to bring their authentic selves to the workplace, that really does allow for more creativity, more innovation, more problem solving, both individually and collectively within teams and business units. That's when you see organizations are able to take themselves to the next level.
That's right. Level up. That's one of your
Yeah,
terms you
yeah,
like, right?
really. And when you
Uh,
think about it, it's critical, right?
it
To the
is.
global marketplace, organizations interact with people from different cultures and clients.
Yeah.
And so, how can you do that if you don't know how to do that? I always say to organizations I serve, you don't know what you don't know, and that's okay. But for some organizations, there's no valid reason why you have not diversified your workforce, but yet you think it's okay to market to and engage, do business with different cultures when you don't even know what it's like to engage with people from different cultures, both in the business setting and oftentimes within even their personal lives.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've talked to leaders who literally have said, I have not physically really shared any meaningful amount of space with someone that didn't look or think like me.
Wow.
And that is to me like shocking, but also really scary because then I start to think about, well, no offense, but like what value do you really have to the organization if you are not a person who seeks growth,
Yeah.
and who seeks to understand people from different walks of life and thereby their needs in which to be able to serve their needs through a product or service or to create a new product or service that does fill their needs. So it's a head scratcher sometimes for me when
Well,
when people are that way and are okay with being that way.
yeah, I think that you don't know what you don't know, and it's okay as long as you're open to learning some things, right? And that intentionality has to be there, where
Yes.
you need to be deliberate about adding experiences, adding people to your world,
Mhm.
researching things that may be challenge or even counter what your beliefs are, because uh, one of the terms that I love is that you're only as good as the last time you've changed your mind.
Yeah.
And I think we need to challenge ourselves um, with the thoughts that we have, and we need to run them through the same process of skepticism that we do for the ideas and thoughts that we don't share and that we don't agree with today, right? We need to run our own thoughts through those same filters to ensure that they check out. They check out. As we get ready to wrap, um, it is February. It is Black History Month, um, and we know that Black history is American history, is
Yes.
world history, right?
Yeah.
Can
Say it
you
loud, say it proud.
will you share, or would you mind sharing any something Black history related, um, an experience, a figure, anything that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yes. So part of what Indelible Impressions is choosing to do for Black History Month 2021 is, first of all, let me say that we honor all those who have gone before us and done the work and laid the foundation for which I'm able to stand on and do what I do today. But Indelible Impressions has made an intentional effort to start highlighting those who are making dramatic and impactful change right now, right? It's the concept of give them their flowers while they're here.
Sure.
And so, someone who I've been watching for quite some time and am continually impressed and inspired by is Cephas Williams. He's over in the UK. He's doing tremendous work with the 56 Black Men initiative project that really just helped highlight different Black men within the space of how Black men are judged.
Right.
And if you get a chance to go check them out, it's an amazing, amazing initiative that he put them all basically in hoodies, and you would never know who they are and that they are change makers and heads of companies, and they are doing great works throughout society. But in addition to that, he really broke the mold with his groundbreaking letter called Letter to Zion, which was this message to his son about the culture. It was uh, the genesis of it was the killing of George Floyd. That was just something so moving for him and everybody else. I can't imagine a single solitary person who was not moved by that unfortunate event. But it caused him to put together this beautiful short film as a letter to his son about what is going on in the world right now and what he's trying to do to change it so that when his son grows up, these problems will no longer exist, hopefully,
Yeah.
prayerfully. And so it's such a beautiful piece. But what that has done in the UK, and to see how it's been on digital billboards and at airports, I mean, it's just like he has broken the mold with this thing. And he's developed this coalition as a result of it, that he's working with some of the largest global companies in the UK to go into their organizations to do some really impactful work. So again, he's just I'm a fan. I am such a fan of his heart. I'm such a fan of his voice and his work. Um, Even though he's a little bit younger than me, I jokingly say like I so want to be him when I grow up. But he's one of the folks that's high up on my a list. And then there's so many other change makers right now. And I don't just look at the status necessarily of where they are in society. There are
Sure.
so many hidden figures among us
Sure.
that are doing great things. And this is not intentional flattery for you, but the fact that as a Black man, you have stepped out of your own comfort zone to step into this role of having this podcast and this vodcast to say, I'm in society. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm an employee. I'm a philanthropist. I'm doing all these different things, but I'm trying to bring a different perspective to important conversations and have those conversations now, um, to help amplify the work that people are doing that are trying to make strides in our community. I think is fantastic. And so, you too are doing that work. And if anybody doesn't know Baxter Hall, well, you need to know Baxter Hall, because he is indeed one of the voices of change that we have in our society right now. So,
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. That's awfully kind. Awfully, awfully kind. Wow. So let's just wrap on that. Tell people where they can find you, Yvonne, and then Indelible as well. Social media, or your website and all that. Where can people
yeah.
find you?
So you can find everything about Indelible Impressions at www.indelible-consulting.com. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. You can learn more about the company, the work that we're doing, the very clients that we're serving, both in the nonprofit and for-profit sector across the United States, as well as some opinion pieces and different initiatives that we are part of, desiring to, again, make an indelible impression for organizations as well as society.
Great, great. I just wanted to say, as we wrap, the thing that is crystal clear every time we have a conversation is your passion. And I think that, you know, uh, having an idea of where you want this to sort of end, right? How you want to see, ultimately, right? Hey, I'm out of work because there's there's this global um, vision and this global diversity that doesn't need to be spoken about. And obviously it's very ambitious, but it's not impossible, right? Um,
Correct.
and it starts with people sort of doing their part,
Mhm.
and you are doing your part and then some. So I want to say, salute to you. Um, uh,
Thank you.
from your approach is so different, but your passion coupled with the strategy piece of it is why I think you've seen a lot of success. But your faith, right?
Mhm.
And you just there's this great combination of things, and I'm just really excited to see what's next for you. So thank you for joining me, and just salute to yourself, the Indelible team, and what the future holds for you guys.
Oh, thank you so much. We're on the job and we don't have any intention of stopping. So again, until society shifts in a major way, we will be at the ready.
That's right. That's right. So thanks everyone for joining us today. As
Yes.
always, if it's something that you like, that you found inspiring, comment, like. If you are, regardless of where you're seeing this or hearing this, thank you for your support. And I hope to talk with you guys again soon.
All right.
Peace.
Thank you, Baxter.
Thank you.
Bye.